Welcome back, my family. Before we jump into today's horror stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Your comments and likes really help YouTube push our video and show you even more stories. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Drop your answers and suggestions in the comments, and who knows, I might give you a shout out in the next video. Thank you for being here and for all your amazing support. I've always believed that flying has its own kind of rhythm. The hum of the engines, the shuffle of passengers down the aisle, the little chime of the seatbelt sign. It's almost like a song that plays in the background of my life. I used to be a nurse before I became a flight attendant, and maybe that's why I was drawn to the skies. Hospitals were full of ghosts for me. Patients I couldn't save, mistakes I couldn't undo. I thought if I put myself in the air, above it all, maybe I could leave the weight behind. But I was wrong. The night it started, Dallas-Fort Worth was drowning in storms. Lightning clawed across the black sky, and rain battered against the terminal windows so hard it sounded like fists. A sudden power outage left the concourse in darkness for a full minute. Emergency lights flickered on, red and pale, turning faces into half-shadows. I remember standing at gate B-17, holding my crew bag tight, when I noticed something strange. Passengers shuffled forward, but some of their boarding passes were smeared, as though the ink had bled in the rain. A woman clutched hers and asked me, "Can you read this? My seat isn't showing up." I glanced down and froze. Her boarding pass had no seat number, just her name and a faded flight number. I brushed it off. Technical errors happen. The outage had probably messed up the printers. But then another passenger came forward, his boarding pass blurred into nonsense, letters swimming like oil in water. That flight, DFW to Portland, was supposed to be routine. Just 3.5 hours. Nothing I hadn't done 100 times before. Yet from the very beginning, something felt wrong. We boarded. The passengers settled. Thunder rattled the fuselage as we taxied down the runway. I smiled, reassured families, helped a teenager with his overhead bag, and joked with a tired businessman about how at least Portland had good coffee waiting. My routine was intact. At 30,000 feet, the cabin lights dimmed. The storm still raged outside, lightning flashing against the windows in white bursts. That's when I saw it, my reflection in the galley mirror. I'd seen myself in that mirror countless times before, but this time, she didn't match me. I reached up to adjust the collar of my uniform, but in the glass, she smiled before I did. Not a polite, professional smile either. It was wide, too wide, teeth bared in something closer to a grin. My stomach dropped. I blinked, shook my head, told myself I was tired. But when I lifted my hand to tuck a strand of hair back, the reflection's hand lagged, just a second late, like a bad video feed. I backed away. The intercom crackled, pulling me out of the moment. "Maya," the captain's voice said. "Everything all right back there?" "Yes," I answered automatically, though my throat was dry. "Just fine," but it wasn't. Half an hour later, while serving drinks, a woman in 22B screamed. The entire cabin turned. She was pointing at me, or rather, through me. Her voice was raw, frantic. "That's not her. The wrong Maya is flying this plane." Passengers murmured. I tried to calm her down, kneeling beside her seat, but she recoiled like I was poison. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, trembling. "She already took your place." I asked what she meant, but she wouldn't answer. She just sobbed into her hands. I went back to the galley, my own hands shaking now. I didn't want to look at the mirror again, but I couldn't stop myself. She was still there, my reflection. But this time, she wasn't copying me at all. She leaned closer to the glass, lips curling, while I stood frozen. Then she raised her hand and pressed it to the inside of the mirror. My hand stayed at my side. I ran. The rest of the flight was a blur. I remember fumbling through the service, my smile brittle, avoiding passengers' eyes. The woman in 22B never stopped staring at me, her face pale, her lips moving in silent prayer. The reflection followed me in every polished surface, metal coffee pots, windows, even the tiny sheen of the bathroom faucet. She moved differently each time, sometimes slower, sometimes faster, but always watching. When we began our descent, I strapped myself in the jump seat, heart hammering against my ribs. The storm had calmed, the seatbelt sign was on, everything should have felt routine. But all I could think about was what would happen when we landed. We touched down in Portland without incident. Passengers applauded, gathered their bags, shuffled off the plane. My crew smiled and said goodbyes, but I was distant, moving like a ghost through the motions. It wasn't until I reached the terminal that I realized something was horribly wrong. At the ID checkpoint, the security guard looked at my badge and frowned. "This isn't you." "What do you mean?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "Of course it's me." He held it up, and I saw it. The name was still mine. The uniform was the same, but the face staring back at me was not mine. It was her, the reflection, smiling. My knees nearly gave out. "This is some kind of mistake," I stammered, reaching for the badge. The guard's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." I backed away, shaking my head. I pulled my phone from my pocket to look at the screen, praying for something familiar, some anchor. But the lock screen wasn't mine. Different photo, different background, different face. Not me. I stumbled into the bathroom, gripping the sink. The mirror stared back. She stood there, perfect, polished, wearing my uniform. I smiled. And when I raised my hand in desperation, she didn't move. She just tilted her head and mouthed something. "You're not real anymore." The lights flickered. The stall doors creaked open one by one. And in every mirror, in every reflection, it was her. Always her. When I stepped back into the terminal, no one looked at me. Not the passengers, not the crew, not even the cleaning staff. It was like I'd already been erased. Somewhere in Portland tonight, there's a flight attendant named Maya, smiling at passengers, serving drinks, living a life that should have been mine. And I'm not sure who I am anymore, or if I exist at all. A quick announcement here. If you're still here and enjoying these stories, but haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do so. Drop a comment too. It really helps push the video out to more people. Your support means everything, and it truly makes my day. People always tell me I have the perfect job. I smile, serve drinks at 30,000 feet, and wake up in a new city every week. They imagine adventure, freedom, maybe even glamour. But what they don't see are the ghosts we carry into the sky with us. Mine has a name, Evan. He was my older brother by 2 years, and he was my anchor in a childhood that often felt like storm. When I became a flight attendant, he teased me for escaping to the clouds. Then one rainy night, 3 years ago, Evan died in a car accident. They said he was texting me at the time, telling me good luck before a red eye. His phone was found open to the unsent message. I've never forgiven myself for that. Grief isn't something you leave behind. It packs itself into your carry-on and follows you down every jet bridge. The night everything changed, we were scheduled to fly from New York to Denver. A storm system rolled across the Midwest like a bruised tide. The captain's voice before takeoff was steady, but I caught the tension underneath it. Lightning forked across the sky as we climbed, thunder vibrating through the fuselage. About an hour into the flight, the turbulence began. Passengers gripped their armrests, and I forced my smile to stay bright as I moved down the aisle, checking belts and trays. But when I reached row 22, my chest went cold. Seat 22C was occupied. By him, a man sat there, shoulders hunched, dark hair dripping like he'd come in from the rain. His clothes looked normal enough, hoodie, jeans, but his skin was too pale, almost gray in the overhead light. He turned his head slowly, and my heart stuttered. "Bird," he whispered. The word cut through me like a blade. Bird. That was Evan's nickname for me, from when I was little and used to hop from couch to couch like a sparrow. No one else knew that name. No one alive, anyway. I backed up so fast, I nearly tripped over the beverage cart. My fellow attendant, Dana, glanced at me. "You okay?" I forced a nod. "Just turbulence." But when I looked back, the man in 22C was staring straight ahead, motionless, as though he hadn't spoken at all. The storm worsened. The plane shuddered like a living thing, wings groaning. Somewhere a child cried. I gripped the galley counter and told myself it was stress, exhaustion, the tricks grief plays on the brain. Yet when I checked 22C again, the seat was empty. The belt buckle hung loose. Dana frowned at the manifest on her tablet. Nobody booked there tonight. My mouth went dry. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Positive." I wanted to scream, but I swallowed it down. I kept moving, serving, smiling. That's what we do. We keep moving. Then the intercom clicked. Static filled the cabin, and through it, a voice. His voice. "Bird." My blood turned to ice. Every muscle locked. I knew that voice better than my own. Evan's voice, but distorted, stretched like it had to travel through miles of storm to reach me. Passengers stirred, whispering. Dana lifted the phone to the captain. "We're getting interference," she said, her brow furrowed. But I knew better. I rushed back to 22C, heart hammering. The seat was still empty, but not really. My brother was there again, soaked, shivering, eyes hollow. He mouthed something I couldn't hear over the roar of the engines. I leaned closer, tears stinging my eyes. "What do you want?" This time, I heard him. "Stay with me." The plane lurched violently, trays clattering, screams rising. Overhead bins popped open. The captain's voice barked over the speakers, telling us to brace. But his words overlapped with another voice, the same one, softer, pleading. "Don't leave me again." The aisle lights flickered. Oxygen masks dropped with a mechanical scream, dangling like pale faces above the passengers. People panicked, fumbling for straps. Through the chaos, I saw him, my brother, moving between the rows. One moment in 22C, the next near the exit door, then behind me in the galley. Everywhere at once. Dana grabbed my arm. "Clara, masks." But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could hear was Evan, whispering the nickname over and over. "Bird, Bird, Bird." Each time softer, more desperate. Then the cabin seemed to tilt, reality bending. The windows filled with blinding white light. I braced for the crash, for the explosion of metal and fire. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. I was lying in snow. My uniform was soaked through, my fingers numb. The world around me was a frozen field, empty in every direction. No plane, no passengers, no wreckage. Just me and him. Evan stood a few feet away, hands hanging at his sides. His face was calm now, almost gentle. "You stayed," he said. I choked on my breath. Where are we? What happened?" He tilted his head. Snowflakes clung to his eyelashes. "They won't find you here. They won't find me either." Panic clawed at my chest. I spun in circles, looking for lights, a road, anything, but there was only endless white. My breath fogged in front of me, and the cold sank deeper. "Help!" I screamed. My voice carried into nothing. When I turned back, Evan was gone. A shadow stretched across the snow where he had stood, a dark stain that slowly faded into the ground. I ran until my lungs burned, but the field never ended. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, days, maybe forever. When I finally collapsed, I heard voices, real ones, shouting, crackling radios. Strong hands lifted me. Flashlights blinded me. They told me later they found me near an empty stretch of forest in Colorado. No plane crash had been reported that night. No flight matched my schedule. As far as the FAA was concerned, I hadn't been in the air at all. But I know the truth. Evan was there. He found me in the storm. He tried to bring me with him. And sometimes when turbulence rocks the cabin and the lights flicker just so, I still hear it over the intercom. Bird. And I know he's not finished with me yet. My name's Clara, and I've worked for North Star Airlines for 7 years. That's long enough to know when something feels wrong before a flight even leaves the ground. It started with a phone call. I wasn't scheduled to work that night. My phone buzzed at 11:37 p.m., just as I was making tea to help me sleep. Dispatch said they needed me for an overnight run to Toronto, flight 3947. They said another attendant had called out. I hesitated. The storm outside rattled my apartment windows, rain smearing the city lights. Every instinct screamed to say no, but I said yes, because that's what we do. We show up. By the time I reached the airport, the storm was in full force. Thunder cracked above the terminal. The gate monitors glitched, flickering in and out. And when I looked up at the departure board, flight 3947 wasn't listed. System lag, the gate agent explained with a shrug. But my stomach churned. The passengers filed in quietly, too quietly. At first, I thought they were just tired. Midnight travelers tend to be. But then I noticed their clothes. A man in a fedora carried a leather briefcase that looked older than my father. A woman's dress was powder blue with a stiff collar, straight out of the 1950s. Even the kids wore lace-up shoes and heavy wool coats. They looked displaced, like they had walked out of another time. I forced a smile as they boarded, but none of them made eye contact. They handed me boarding passes that felt soft and faded, as though they'd been printed decades ago. Seat 17C caught my attention. Empty, but as I glanced at the manifest, I froze. The name listed, there was one I hadn't spoken in years. Evan, my brother, the same brother who had died in a car accident 3 years ago. My hand shook so badly, I nearly dropped the tablet. I blinked, hoping it was a glitch, but the name stayed. We took off into the storm. The engines roared, lightning flashing against the wings. The passengers sat unnervingly still, barely moving, barely blinking. I walked the aisle, offering smiles, checking belts. No one responded. Some mouthed words under their breath, but no sound came out. Halfway through, the intercom crackled. Static, then a voice. Clara. I froze in the galley. The voice wasn't the captain's. It was Evan's. Clara, stay with me. My chest tightened. I stumbled into the aisle, scanning the rows. Passengers' heads turned in eerie unison, eyes wide and blank. And then, as if on cue, they began to chant softly like a tide rolling in. Stay with us. Stay with us. Stay with us. The words rose and fell, in rhythm with the storm outside. I clutched the seat backs, my heart slamming against my ribs. Stop, I whispered. Please stop. But they didn't. The plane shuddered violently. Luggage crashed from overhead bins. Oxygen masks dropped like white ghosts. The captain shouted something over the intercom, but his words were drowned out by another voice. Evans again, clearer this time. Don't fight it, Bird. Come with me. Bird. He used a nickname only he ever called me. The chanting passengers leaned forward in their seats, faces pale, eyes glowing faint in the dim light. I stumbled backward, gripping the galley counter. Then everything tilted. The plane dropped. Passengers screamed, or maybe I did. The floor pitched sideways, lights flickered, and the world became a blur of thunder and tearing metal. I braced for fire, for pain, for the end. But instead, silence. I opened my eyes in snow. Again, just like the dream I'd had 100 times since Evan's death. But this wasn't a dream. My uniform was torn, my hands scraped raw, breath fogged in the freezing air. Around me stretched a wide, empty field, rimmed with trees black against a gray sky. No plane, no wreckage, no passengers, only me and him. Evan stood a few yards away. Same dark hair, same crooked smile. He looked alive, too alive. "You stayed," he said softly. My throat tightened. No, this isn't real." He stepped closer, snow crunching beneath his shoes. "It's real enough. You don't have to go back. Stay with me." Tears blurred my vision. "But you're dead." His expression flickered, sad, then angry. "Only because you left me behind. Don't make the same mistake twice." The air grew colder. My breath came in ragged bursts. Behind Evan, the passengers appeared in the tree line, still chanting, "Stay with us." Their voices carried over the snow, low and endless. I fell to my knees. "Please stop, please." But the world went dark. When I woke again, I was lying on the floor of my apartment. My phone buzzed beside me. The time, 11:37 p.m. The exact moment dispatch had called about Flight 3947. Only now, there was no record of the call. My schedule was empty. I tried to report what happened, but my supervisor looked at me blankly. "Clara, there is no Flight 3947. That number isn't even in our system." I searched online. No results. Nothing. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And worst of all, it didn't end there. Every time I walk through an airport now, I see him, Evan, sitting quietly at gates, holding a faded boarding pass in his hand. Sometimes he smiles. Sometimes he just stares, always waiting. I've stopped flying. I quit North Star a month after that night. But even on the ground, I feel it. The hum of an engine in the distance, the whisper of a storm overhead, the faintest echo of a chant in the crowd. Stay with us. And sometimes, God help me, I almost want to. I've flown enough midnight routes to know when a passenger gives me a bad feeling. You can tell in the way they board, too quiet, too stiff, or too eager to avoid eye contact. But what happened that night on Flight 228 still crawls under my skin. It was supposed to be simple, Chicago to Seattle, just under 4 hours. I'd worked the route a dozen times. I wasn't tired, I wasn't distracted. Nothing about that night should have been unusual. But then I saw him. Seat 14C. He was already there when boarding began, hunched forward, hands clasped tight in his lap. He was thin, too thin, like he'd been starved for weeks. His skin was pale, stretched over sharp cheekbones. He wore an old brown jacket that looked damp, and from where I stood, I swear I smelled earth. Not the clean kind, but damp soil like freshly dug ground after rain. At first, I thought maybe he was sick. We get that sometimes, people flying home for medical reasons. But when I leaned down to offer him water, he looked up and my stomach lurched. His eyes were sunken, gray around the edges. His lips moved, whispering numbers under his breath. I couldn't catch them all, just fragments. 14, 7, 14 again. "Sir," I asked, keeping my voice calm, "do you need anything before takeoff?" He didn't respond, just kept whispering those numbers like a broken record. I backed away, plastering on a smile as more passengers boarded. Once we were in the air, things got stranger. I was helping a mother with her child in row 10 when I felt it, someone watching me. I glanced toward 14C. He was staring, lips still moving, eyes locked on me. My skin prickled. I looked again a few minutes later, but the seat was empty. I walked quickly down the aisle, checking rows. The seat belt in 14C was buckled neatly. No sign he had left. "Elena," whispered Hannah, the attendant working my section. "Did you see that?" "See what?" She nodded toward the galley mirror. My reflection stood there, pale and stiff. But just behind me, over my shoulder, the man in 14C was smiling. When I spun around, the galley was empty. We carried on with service, though my hands shook as I poured drinks. Every time I passed 14C, I caught that smell again, the thick, cloying scent of damp dirt. Passengers wrinkled their noses, whispering to each other. One man asked if there was something wrong with the ventilation. Victor, the lead attendant, pulled me aside. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed, except that's exactly what I felt I had seen. "He keeps disappearing," I whispered. Victor frowned. "Who?" "The man in 14C. He gave me a strange look. "Elena, 14C is empty." My stomach flipped. "No, I checked. He was there. But when we went back together, the seat was vacant. No passenger, no belongings. Nothing." Victor touched my arm gently. "Get some water. You're working too many shifts." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was exhausted. But then, as I turned away, I heard it. A whisper in my ear. 14. The rest of the flight blurred into a nightmare rhythm. Passengers dozed. Lights dimmed. The engines hummed. And through it all, the man appeared and disappeared like smoke. Sometimes in his seat, sometimes in the aisle. Once, right behind a sleeping passenger, his lips inches from their ear. Always whispering those numbers. 14, 7, 14. At one point, I found him in the rear galley. He stood so close I could see the damp strands of hair clinging to his forehead. "You left me," he whispered. My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" He tilted his head, eyes boring into mine. "You left me in the ground." I staggered back, heart pounding. I had no idea what he meant. When I blinked, he was gone. By the third hour, I was convinced I was losing my mind. But then Hannah came rushing from the front, pale as paper. "Elena," she hissed. 14C. He's there. He just asked me for water. I froze. "You saw him?" She nodded violently, trembling. I swear it. His hands were shaking. He spilled a cup. And then he wasn't there anymore. Victor overheard, skeptical at first. But later, when the lights flickered and turbulence rocked the cabin, Victor went pale. "I saw him," he muttered, voice shaking, right in the jump seat. He looked straight at me. That was when I knew it wasn't just me. As we descended towards Seattle, the cabin lights flickered again, dimming to almost nothing. Passengers stirred, uneasy. The smell of earth filled the air, stronger than ever. And then, in the middle of the cabin, he stood. The man from 14C. Everyone saw him this time. I know they did because passengers gasped, some screamed, others clawed at their seatbelts. He raised his head slowly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. 14. 14 souls. 7 still waiting. The lights snapped back, and he was gone. We landed without incident, though half the cabin was in tears. Hannah clung to my arm as we disembarked, whispering prayers. Victor wouldn't speak at all. When we checked the manifest later, my blood froze. There had been 137 passengers booked on that flight, but the count didn't match. Only 136 boarded. One seat, 14C, remained empty. I tried to forget it. We all did. But weeks later, I looked up old accident reports. My hands shook as I read them. Flight 228, same route, 15 years ago. A crash on approach to Seattle. 137 passengers on board. Only 136 bodies recovered. The missing passenger's seat number, 14C. Since then, every time I work a flight, I glance at the manifest. I can't help it. And sometimes when turbulence rattles the cabin, I hear it again, soft and steady, right behind my ear. 14, 7, 14, and I know he's still counting. My name's Elena. If you've worked in the skies as long as I have, you learn the rhythm of a flight. You know when turbulence will start before the captain even calls it. You can tell when a passenger will need a blanket before they ask. But nothing in my years as a flight attendant prepared me for what I saw that night in seat 17A. It started on a red-eye from Atlanta to Phoenix. Routine, short, nothing to worry about. I've been running on caffeine and muscle memory, smiling through exhaustion. The cabin lights dimmed, casting everything in a sleepy orange glow. That's when I noticed him. He was gaunt, his face drawn tight, skin the color of old parchment. His eyes were dark, almost bottomless, and he sat perfectly still, staring out the window. Nothing unusual at first glance. But then I realized he was mimicking me. When I tilted my head, he tilted his. When I crossed my arms, he crossed his. His movements weren't perfect, like a beat behind, but enough to chill me. I forced myself to walk past, heart hammering. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe he was just restless. But when I glanced into the reflective surface of the galley cabinet, I nearly screamed. He wasn't just mimicking me, he was grinning. In the reflection, his lips curved up in a smile that I hadn't made. As I tried to steady my breathing, a sound drifted through the cabin. Soft at first, then clearer. A hum. I froze. The tune was one I hadn't heard in years, but I knew it instantly. My brother Ethan used to hum it when he was high, trying to calm himself. It was the same lullaby my grandmother had sung to us as kids. Ethan had died 3 years ago. Overdose. The guilt still tore me apart. I'd ignored his calls that last week, convinced he'd just relapse again, that he'd never change. He had begged me to stay, and I hadn't. Now here at 30,000 feet, the man in 17A hummed Ethan's tune. I wanted to run, to tell Hannah or Victor, my fellow attendants, but when I glanced back, the seat was empty. Service carried on, but my hand shook so badly I nearly spilled coffee on a passenger. My heart wouldn't stop racing, and then the object started appearing. In the galley drawer where we keep stir sticks, I found it, Ethan's guitar pick, the same one he used to carry in his wallet. In my pocket, I found a folded piece of paper. Ethan's handwriting. Why didn't you stay? I nearly dropped the note. My knees went weak. Passengers whispered, unsettled by my pale face. But when I tried to show Hannah, the note was gone. Just empty paper. Halfway through the flight, turbulence shook the cabin hard. Lights flickered. I braced myself, gripping the card. And then I heard it. Lena. Not my name as most people said it. Ethan had always drawn it out softer, gentler. That was the voice. I turned slowly. 17A was occupied again. He was there, staring at me, lips moving in time with my breath. And then, for the first time, he spoke aloud. Why didn't you stay? Passengers around him didn't react. They sat still, dozing unaware. But his eyes drilled into mine, dark and endless. I stumbled backward. You're not real. He tilted his head. Neither was I, in the end. The plane jolted again. An overhead had been popped, bags spilling. People cried out, fumbling for seatbelts. I tried to move, to reassure them, but my body wouldn't respond. He rose from 17A, his movements slow, deliberate. He walked down the aisle, but no one seemed to see him but me. He stopped just inches from my face. The smell of damp earth and stale smoke clung to him. He raised his hand. In his palm was Ethan's old lighter, the one he'd carried since high school. He pressed it into my hand. Why didn't you stay? He whispered again. I felt tears burn my eyes. I tried. I couldn't save you. He smiled then, wide and broken, teeth too sharp. You could have. The cabin tilted violently. People screamed. The lights went out. When they flickered back, he was gone. Passengers looked shaken, but no one spoke of the man. Hannah touched my arm gently. Elena, are you okay? You're white as a sheet. I nodded weakly. Just turbulence. But in my hand, the lighter was still there. Cold metal. Real. We landed in Phoenix without further incident. but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I slipped the lighter into my bag, half afraid it would vanish if I let go. That night in the hotel, I unpacked. The lighter sat on the desk, glinting in the lamplight. Next to it was the folded note again. Only this time, the words had changed. Why didn't you stay forever? I haven't told the airline. How could I? They ground me, send me for evaluations. But I know what I saw, what I heard. Ethan, or something wearing his memory, found me on that flight, and it used my guilt like a knife, carving me open at 30,000 feet. Sometimes, when I work late-night routes now, I hear the hum again, that lullaby drifting through the cabin. Passengers don't react, but I know it's there. And every time I pass row 17, I feel it, the weight of eyes following me. Waiting. One day, I think, he won't just ask why I didn't stay. One day, he'll make sure I never leave. People think the sky is a clean slate. They think if you climb high enough, the ground can't reach you. No memories, no mistakes, no rooms you don't step into anymore. I thought that too for a while. I thought I could leave what happened on the ground. I thought if I kept moving, if I kept smiling, the pain would lag behind like an unclaimed suitcase. It didn't. My name is Amara. I've been a flight attendant for 6 years. I used to love the uniform. I loved the neat lines, the way the wings pin sat over my heart, the way it made strangers smile at me like I was someone who could help. After the hospital, after the quiet ultrasound room, and the doctor who kept saying, "I'm so sorry," like it was a script he'd practiced, I stopped pinning the wings over my heart. I shifted them slightly to the side. I told people it was for comfort. The truth was, I couldn't bear any weight there. I didn't tell anyone at work. A few weeks off, a note from my doctor, and then I went back to the sky. People told me I was strong. People told me time would fix it. Time didn't fix it. Time just dulled enough so that I could stand upright, check seatbelts, and ask if anyone wanted ginger ale. The first time I saw her was on a red-eye from Newark to LAX. Typical mix on board. People with laptops who refused to sleep, a couple newborns with parents who looked like they hadn't slept in months, a row of college kids in hoodies, a businessman who complained about the air being too cold and then too warm. Lights down to a low amber. The captain's voice steady. All the usual things, all the usual rhythms, the hum of the engines, the soft chime of the seatbelt sign, the rustle of snack bags. I was in the forward galley, alone for a moment. I pulled open the metal cabinet to grab more cups. The door swung like a mirror. It caught me from shoulder to waist. And over my left shoulder, clear as anything, I saw a woman sitting in 2A who wasn't there. She wore a uniform I had only seen in old airline posters. Crisp blue dress with a narrow belt, a tiny hat tilted just so, white gloves. A vintage flight attendant, but not the soft, smiling ones from those ads. Her face was too still. She looked like a portrait in a hallway you didn't want to walk down alone. Her lipstick was a red that would stain a teacup and never wash off. The pin at her collar wasn't wings. It was a narrow metal arrow with a tiny enamel shield, like a badge from another era. I turned around fast. Seats 1 and 2 were empty. Both had meal service trays down. Both blankets were neatly folded. No one there. I looked back at the cabinet's steel, half expecting to see my own face look wrong. It was only me now, pale in the glow, cups in hand, breathing too loud. "Need a hand?" Jess asked, stepping into the galley. Jess is the kind of coworker you pray for on a long haul. Steady, funny at exactly the right times, and quiet at exactly the right times too. "I'm good," I said. My voice came out thin. Just grabbing cups. We moved down the aisle together, service like muscle memory. I told myself the reflection had been a trick of light. I told myself it was the curved metal warping a headrest into a person. That's what the mind does. It offers simple answers first so you can keep going. We hit some rough air over Kansas. A baby started to wail, and I rocked the aisle with the cart in my fake calm. When the turbulence settled, the plane felt soft and sleepy again. I went back to the galley to restock. I shut the cabinet and froze. She stood right behind me in the reflection, so close I could see the stitched line on her white gloves. The little hat sat perfect, not a strand of her hair out of place. Her eyes were focused on my hands like she was measuring something. Her lips moved. The words didn't come at first. I only saw the shape of them, slow and deliberate. Then the sound arrived a beat later, quiet and even, like a request she'd practiced on 1,000 aisles. "Give it to me." I spun, bumping the counter with my hip. No one. Empty galley, empty aisle, the soft shape of sleeping passengers beyond. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was the new light pattern on overhead bin 3, the reflection catching an old ad image stuck in my head. I took a breath. Another. Jess leaned in and asked if I wanted water. I said I was fine. "Give it to me," she said again, but this time it was not in the steel. It was behind me. It was at my ear. I closed my eyes just 1 second, maybe 2, and I saw a white hallway that smelled like antiseptic in winter. I saw a paper bracelet on my wrist. I saw a technician's hand press a button and a black and white ocean go quiet. The hallway turned, and the door was one I knew, maternal fetal medicine. And somewhere behind the door, a machine clicked as it cooled down. "Give it to me," the woman said. "What?" I whispered. "What do you want?" She didn't answer. The lights flickered. The standing water in the coffee tray wavered. In the reflection on its surface, my face was too far away, and her face was too near. We landed in Los Angeles a little ahead of schedule. Passengers clapped. People always clap on red ice when they end. It's like they're applauding themselves for surviving the night. I wiped down tray tables and bins, my hands shaking in little bursts I tried to hide. When we stepped off the plane and the jet bridge, air hit my skin. Warm, stale, human, I could breathe again. At the hotel, Jess asked if I wanted to grab breakfast. I said I needed a shower first. The water pounded hard and too hot, the only way I can ever feel clean. I pressed my forehead to the tile and let the sound fill my head. When I stepped out, the mirror was fogged. I ran a towel across it and dropped the towel on the floor because there she was behind me, as perfectly arranged as if steam could never touch her. "Give it to me," she said. The syllables were round and patient. I watched her mouth in the glass. She did not breathe. Her hat did not move. My breath did, fast and sharp. "What?" I asked again. "What do you want me to give you?" She raised her gloved hand then and pointed to the place on my chest where my wings should sit. Not where I pinned them now, off to the side. She pointed to the center. "This," I said. My voice shook. "You want this?" She stared. The mirror held our two bodies in a rectangle I wanted to break. I reached for the wings, but my fingers found nothing. I had left the pin on the dresser before my shower. Her eyes moved down toward my stomach. The air in the bathroom cooled so fast the mirror fogged again at the edges. A pulse of pain rolled through me, deep, old, unfair. "I don't have anything to give you," I whispered. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. Her head tilted, slow as clock hands. Her lips curved in a shape that was not quite a smile. Then she lifted her gloved fingers to her throat, where her narrow metal pin sat bright against blue. She tapped it once. The sound didn't belong to the mirror. It rang in the room, clear, metallic, close. I looked down. The towel around me had a small dark spot, like a raindrop. I touched it. My fingers came away with something sticky and faintly red. I stared. Not blood. Makeup. Lipstick red. A smear drawn in a longer stroke than any accidental touch would make, like someone had pressed a mouth to the fabric and dragged it. I slept with the lamp on and the TV muttering about weather patterns I didn't care about. I dreamed of a tiny hat sitting on a tray table, an oxygen mask dangling from it like a second face. On the turn back east the next day, I pinched my wings into the exact center of my blouse because I didn't want to see her point again. The metal bit the fabric. The weight sat where the weight used to sit. I told myself it was just until we landed. We were cruising above Indiana when the smell hit. Old perfume, powdery and sweet, the kind they call classic in shops that sell cut glass and lace. A passenger in 4C wrinkled her nose and asked if anyone had sprayed something. Jess shrugged. I said I'd check the lav. I stepped into the forward lav, flicked the lock, and turned. The mirror here was small and bright. The woman was not in it. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and pulled a paper towel to wipe my eyes. I leaned forward. The porcelain sink hissed. A shadow moved inside the mirror. Not beside me, not behind me. Inside it, like the glass was a doorway, and she was on the other side of it, deciding whether to step through. The light above the mirror crackled once. She appeared, her face close enough that if the mirror were water, our noses would touch. "Give it to me," she said. The 4 words were the same shape every time. Polite, professional, relentless. "I can't," I said. "Please." She lifted her hand, and the glove seemed glowed briefly, like a pencil line caught in sunlight. She pointed at my wings. The pin at her collar flashed like a blade. The plane lurched. Seatbelt chime. A call button pinged somewhere. Jess's voice came through the interphone. "We've got a rough patch." "You good?" "Fine," I said. I didn't take my eyes off the mirror. The woman's gaze shifted down, once more toward my stomach. I pressed my palm there, reflex stuck even months later. There is a kind of emptiness the body remembers longer than the mind does. "Give it to me," she said again, but there was a new shape inside the words. Not greed, not hunger, something closer to barter. A trade. "What are you?" I asked, which was not what I meant. I meant, "What do you want from me so I can have my life back?" She didn't answer. She tilted her head the other way. Her hat didn't move. Her smile, if that was what it was, didn't move. But her eyes were wet now, not with tears, but with something reflective, like the surface of a lake just after wind. I left the lav shaking. A man asked for club soda. I poured it like a person in a film about a flight attendant who is very calm and very fine. In the galley, while I set down the can, my sleeve brushed the edge of the counter. The sound it made, fabric against metal, was the sound her glove made when she tapped her pin. We landed in Newark to low cloud and a thin rain. I changed in the crew room. I told myself I was going to pin my wings off to the side again, where I could pretend my heart was empty air. I reached up to unclip them. They didn't move. I pressed harder. Nothing. The pin prongs didn't give. It was as if the metal had melted into the fabric, as if the blouse had grown around it. I felt silly for the first 10 seconds, like I was the punchline of a prank. Then I felt something else. Under the wings, not the fast flutter of my heart, but another pressure, dull and deep, an old contraction that had never finished. I pulled the blouse over my head. The pin didn't lift with it. The fabric stretched, and then it didn't tear. It thinned in a perfect circle around the wings, like the cloth had decided the pin was part of me, and if something had to give, it wouldn't be the metal. I stood in my camisole and stared at the uniform lying on the bench. The wings stared back. I picked up the blouse. The pin was cold and heavy. I could feel it through the cotton. Jess stuck her head into the room. "You heading out?" "In a minute," I said. My voice sounded normal. It should not have. On my drive home, the rain deepened, wipers at full speed. The radio spoke in static. A billboard for a vintage clothing store showed 3 women in old uniforms holding up cocktail napkins that said "Fly Happy" in block letters. I laughed, a quick, ugly sound that scared me. I turned the radio up. The static made a shape that sounded like give. At home, I put the blouse on a chair like a person in a movie would put down a loaded gun. I showered long, then stood in front of my bedroom mirror in a t-shirt and jeans. My chest felt lighter without the uniform. My skin felt like it belonged to me again. I slept hard and dreamless. In the morning, the blouse wasn't on the chair. It was hanging on my closet door, neat on a hanger, the wings centered exactly. I hadn't touched it. I live alone. I said it out loud in my kitchen to make it true. I live alone. The day after that, I woke with my uniform on me. I had put on pajamas before bed. The pajamas were under the blouse now, bunched and twisted. The wings sat cold against my skin. I laughed once, and it cracked into a sob. I tried the pin again. No movement. I pressed my thumb into the metal until a crescent mark rose on my skin. I made an appointment with a therapist I found through our employee resource list. I thought about what I could say that would be true and also sayable. I think I'm seeing someone who isn't there felt less dangerous than I think a woman from 1955 is trying to take something out of my chest. When I closed my eyes in the waiting room, the perfume smell came back, powder and mothballs and something like lilac. When the therapist called my name, she mispronounced it gently. I didn't correct her. I sat on the couch and folded my hands hard enough for my knuckles to yellow. "What brings you in?" she asked. "My job," I said, and some grief. I was proud of how steady my voice was. "Tell me about the grief," she said. So I did. The hospital. The way the nurses were so kind you wanted to hate them. The way the aftercare pamphlet had a leaf on the front, like it was supposed to mean renewal. The way I avoided baby aisles in stores. The way the plane felt safer because no one expects you to carry anything heavy at 30,000 feet. "And now?" she asked. "Now there's a woman," I said before I could stop myself. "She keeps asking me to give something to her." The therapist's face didn't move much. That is a skill they teach you. Her eyes were warm though. "What do you think she wants?" "My wings," I said. "Or what's under them?" "And what's under them?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, and felt the lie drop like a stone through water. On my next pairing, I requested mid-cabin so I wouldn't have to work the forward galley mirror. The scheduler obliged. The first leg was smooth, sleepy bright. I almost convinced myself I had turned a corner. Over Denver, a call light pinged from row 2. I frowned. First class wasn't my zone. Just wasn't in the aisle. I went forward to help. 2A was empty. On the seat lay a hat. Tiny, navy, tilted. No passenger had worn a hat on board. We tell them to stow them. I picked it up with 2 fingers. The material felt like something a museum would protect under glass. Inside, there was a name stitched in pale thread. I waited for it to be something theatrical, Evelyn or Gloria. It was simpler, for letters. "And, ma'am," a man behind me asked, "is the Wi-Fi down?" "I'll check," I said reflexively. I set the hat down on the armrest and turned. When I turned back, the hat was gone. I checked the overhead, checked the floor. Nothing. I caught my reflection in the bulkhead's glossy panel and saw the hat sitting perfect on my head. I reached up fast. My hair was bare. My hand hit air and came back with the smell of old powder. "Give it to me," the voice said, and the panel held her face behind mine like we were 2 layers of the same person. The pin at her collar flashed once, twice, like the blink of a distant plane in a night sky. "What are you?" I asked again because I didn't know what else to ask. She didn't answer. She touched the place on her chest where her pin sat. Then she lifted her hand and pressed her palm flat against the glass. The panel fogged under her glove, just for a second, like her skin was warm. I pressed my palm there too before I could stop myself. The glass was cold. The fog disappeared. My hand came away with the faintest dusting of something white like talc, like the inside of a glove shaken out. That night in the hotel, I lay on the bed and put my own wings on my chest. The metal was heavy, and I was tired of being afraid of it. I thought about A&N. I thought about women who flew when people called them stewardesses and asked them to weigh in before flights. I thought about rules and about being graceful and about lipstick they had to reapply when the plane dropped in rough air. I thought about the photo in my grandmother's living room, her sister in a uniform like that, smiling with all her teeth. What if I give you the wings? I asked the ceiling. Is that what you want? Is that all? The lamp flickered once, as if an airplane passed in front of the sun. I dreamed of an aisle lined with mirrors. In each one, my uniform shifted slightly until it matched hers. Hat, gloves, narrow belt, pin over the center of my chest. In every mirror, the pin looked like a small door latch, and behind every latch there was a sound. Not crying, not wind. A rhythm, beating, faint and stubborn. When I woke, my uniform was on the chair. The pin glinted in the early light. I reached for it, and the room tilted, like standing up too fast, like turbulence, like the moment just before you hear bad news. I set the pin down, and the room steadied. On the final leg home, a woman in 3C asked me for hot tea. She was pregnant. Her hands cradled her belly without thinking, an everyday pose that still felt like a foreign language to me. I poured the tea carefully. My hands didn't shake. When I handed it over, the woman smiled. "You're very good at this," she said. "It's like you know what I need before I ask." I nodded, and something inside me, that stubborn rhythm, thumped once in answer. I went back to the galley. The plane hummed. The coffee tray water was still. For a long time, nothing happened. And then the perfume smell curled into the air, soft as a memory. I turned slowly to the oven door, polished to a mirror, ready to see her and not run. She was there, perfect as before. She did not look angry. She did not look kind. She looked like a woman who had work to do and time to do it. "Give it to me," she said. "What?" I asked, steady this time. She tilted her head, not left, not right, but forward just a touch. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, her words changed. "Give it to me," she said. Then, plainly, softly, the pain. The galley lights were very bright. My hands were very still. I nodded once because I didn't know the rules of this. "Ow!" She lifted 2 fingers and tapped her pin. I lifted my hand and laid it flat over the wings against my chest. The metal was cold. Beneath it, warmth. Not grief. Not yet. Just warmth. A door latch, small, stubborn. "Okay," I said. "Take it." The engines deepened. Or maybe that was just my breath. The cabinet clicked somewhere. A call light pinged and then went quiet. In the oven door, her hand rose to meet mine on the glass. Glove to skin, not touching. The perfume was strong and then faint, like someone walking past you in a hallway. Something lifted, not the memory, not the fact. Those stayed. But the weight that had been pressing straight down on my heart for months loosened like a tight knot tugged free. It did not float away. It shifted. It moved to the edges, made room at the center for air. I didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of release. It was the first gentle breath after a long underwater count. The woman lowered her hand. Her head dipped the smallest bit. A nod or a correction to a hat brim. I couldn't tell. The light caught her pin one last time, and then she was gone. The oven door showed only me. The galley smelled like coffee and plastic and the citrus cleaner the catering crew uses when they're in a hurry. I stood still until Jess stuck her head in and said, "You good?" "Yeah," I said. And for the first time since the white hallway, I meant it. When we landed, the applause felt like applause for something else. I went home. I hung my uniform on the back of a chair. I reached for the wings. They unclipped easily, like they always had. The fabric underneath was whole. My skin was warm. I set the pin on my dresser and watched the light catch it. It looked smaller than it had a week ago. I still see her sometimes, in polished metal or the corner of a wide window. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. When I'm walking down the aisle with a cart and I hear a baby cry, I feel the rhythm under my palm, and I press there for a second, not with fear but with recognition. Pain doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It finds a seat. It buckles in. The other day, a vintage shop downtown put a blue uniform in the window. Hat, gloves, narrow belt. I stood outside in the sun and looked at it for a long time. The pin on the collar had a tiny enamel shield. The name card inside the hat said A&N. I went in, touched the glass, and thanked nobody in particular and someone in particular at the same time. On my next red eye, a woman in 2A asked for an extra blanket. I tucked it around her. She said I had a gentle touch. I smiled and said, "Thank you." It didn't hurt to say it. When I went back to the galley, I glanced at the cabinet. The steel showed my face and only my face. I smoothed my blouse. I considered moving the wings off to the side like I had for months. I didn't. I kept them where they were, centered. The weight felt right. Not heavy, present. The door latch of my heart is still there. Some days it lifts. Some days it sticks. On the days it sticks, I remember a woman in a precise hat tapping her pin and asking for the pain like it was something she could carry while I served tea. I remember the powdery perfume, the glove against the glass, the way the engine hum grew richer when I said okay. The sky is not a clean slate. It is full of everything we bring to it, but it is also wide, and sometimes it makes space. Sometimes it holds you until you can hold yourself. If you ask me now what she wanted, truly wanted, I would say it was never the wings. It was never the little metal proof that I belong up here. It was the part of me I kept locking away because I thought surviving meant silence. "Give it to me," she said, and for once I did. And I am still here. Airports at night always feel a little haunted. The bright lights make everything look alive. But if you watch long enough, you notice the emptiness under it. Travelers slumped in chairs like forgotten dolls. The echo of announcements bouncing in half-empty terminals. The way shadows pool in corners no one looks at. I've worked enough red eyes to stop noticing most of it. But that winter night, boarding a flight from Boston to Minneapolis, I noticed her. She was standing near the window, staring out at the snow-covered runway. A pale blue dress clung to her shoulders, powder-colored fabric that looked like it belonged in a photograph from the 1960s. Her shoes were thin, not made for snow, and frost had already touched the hem of her skirt. No coat, no bag, just her. I try not to stare. Maybe she was heading to a vintage party. Maybe she was a passenger. But when I scanned the boarding passes later, her name never appeared. And yet, when I walked down the aisle mid-flight, there she was sitting calmly in 12B, hands folded, eyes locked on mine. "Ma'am," I whispered, leaning down. "Can I see your boarding pass?" She didn't blink. She only said one thing. "Don't leave him in the snow." The words were soft, flat, and they froze my heart colder than the storm outside. I hadn't heard that phrase in years, but it was tied to a memory I couldn't escape. My boyfriend, Daniel. We've been together 4 years, on and off, mostly on, but I left him one January, in the middle of a blizzard. He had begged me not to go that night, said the roads were too bad, said we could fight in the morning. But I packed a bag anyway. I drove off, tires skidding, taillights glowing red in the whiteout. 2 days later, I got the call. He'd gone out to shovel, slipped, hit his head. The cold did the rest. I never forgave myself. I left him in the snow. And now, 30,000 feet above frozen ground, a stranger in a powder blue dress said those exact words. The rest of the crew didn't see her. I asked Jess if anyone was sitting in 12B. She checked the manifest. "Empty," she said. But every time I walked by, the woman was there, eyes sharp and steady, repeating the same words. "Don't leave him in the snow." The temperature in the cabin dipped. Passengers pulled blankets higher, shivered in their seats. I rubbed my arms, but the chill wasn't from the air vents. It was deeper, crawling under my skin. When I ducked into the galley to breathe, I caught my reflection in the coffee pot steel. She was behind me, closer than before, her breath fogging the glass. I spun, but the galley was empty. Only the faint scent of snow and lilac hung in the air. We landed without incident, but the snow followed me. Minneapolis was buried under fresh drifts. My boots crunched ice on the walk to the crew van. That night in the hotel, I dropped onto the bed, exhausted. I pulled back the blanket, and a seat belt buckle clattered onto the floor. Not from my flight, not from my uniform. It was old, scratched, the kind I'd seen in photos of planes long retired. I picked it up with shaking hands, and then I noticed my uniform blouse hanging in the closet. On the collar was a pin I didn't own, a vintage flight attendant's badge, enamel faded, edges sharp. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. The next day, on the flight back, she was there again. Powder blue, pale as frost, seated wherever I wasn't looking until I looked. Passengers didn't notice. Crew didn't see. She spoke only to me, her lips never moving much, her voice soft as snowfall. Don't leave him in the snow. I wanted to scream at her that I hadn't meant to, that it was a mistake, that I was young and angry and stupid. But the words stuck in my throat. The turbulence shook us hard, oxygen masks rattling in their compartments. A passenger cried out. Lights flickered, and in the dark blink between flashes, she was suddenly standing in the aisle, just feet from me, frost clinging to her lashes. She leaned close, so close I felt cold seep into my bones. You left him, she whispered. Now you stay. We landed in Boston. Passengers cheered, collected bags, left behind their blankets and magazines. The crew joked about turbulence, glad to be back on solid ground. But when I went home that night, the seat belt buckle was on my nightstand. The vintage pin was resting on my pillow. And in the mirror, when I brushed my hair, she was standing behind me. Powder blue, pale, patient. Don't leave him in the snow. I don't know if she wants me to confess, to suffer, or to follow. But I know she isn't leaving. Every winter, when the first snow falls, I hear her in the wind outside my window. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see Daniel too, half buried in white, reaching for me. I used to teach art. Brushes, charcoal, blank pages. That was my world before the sky called me. People ask why I left teaching for flight attendant work. I tell them I wanted adventure, to see the world. The truth is messier. My ex-husband said I'd crack under pressure. He laughed when I told him I wanted to build a studio, call me fragile, unfit. His voice followed me into every classroom until even my students started to feel like eyes judging, waiting for me to break. So I left it behind. The canvas, the easel, the smell of oil paint. But you don't leave behind a voice like that. You just bury it deeper. On a night flight from Miami to Chicago, it clawed its way back. Row 19F. I noticed him as soon as I walked down the aisle. A man, gaunt and gray-skinned, staring straight ahead. His clothes were wrinkled, old-fashioned, but not in a stylish way. He smelled faintly of damp soil, like a garden after heavy rain. He didn't blink when I greeted him. Didn't answer when I asked if he wanted water. He just stared. By the time we leveled off, the cabin was quiet. Passengers dozed under blankets, the hum of the engines soft and steady. But the man in 19F was awake, eyes locked forward, lips moving soundlessly. When I leaned closer, I realized he wasn't silent at all. He was whispering, "You'll crack, you'll crack, you'll crack." The voice wasn't his. It was my ex-husband's. I stumbled back, heart racing. The man never looked at me, but the words poured out of his mouth in a voice that wasn't his own. An hour later, the intercom crackled. I expected the captain's calm announcement, maybe a turbulence warning. But the voice that spilled through the cabin wasn't his. It was the same voice. My ex-husband's. You'll never hold it together, Maya. You'll break like glass. Passengers stirred, confused. Hannah, my fellow attendant, grabbed the phone and frowned. No one's on the other line, she whispered. The system's not even active. But the voice kept going, threading through the static, cruel and familiar. You couldn't handle a classroom. You can't handle this. The man in 19F smiled faintly, his lips syncing with the words. I tried to distract myself, checking on passengers, pouring drinks. But the haunting followed me. In the galley drawer, I found something impossible. One of my old brushes stiff with dried paint, the wood cracked from years of use. I hadn't seen it since the divorce. I dropped it like it burned me. Later, when I reached into my apron pocket for napkins, my fingers brushed paper. I pulled it out, a sketch. My own sketch, one I'd abandoned years ago. A charcoal study of a face. His face. My ex-husband's sneer, lines hard and ugly. Passengers complained about a chill in the cabin. I felt it too, sharp and damp, clinging to my uniform. Every time I passed 19F, the man stared blankly, lips moving in sync with the PA static. You'll crack. You'll crack. We hit turbulence. Oxygen masks shuddered in their compartments. Passengers clutched armrests. Through the chaos, the PA screamed to life again. Maya Torres, the voice thundered. Weak, fragile, useless. It was louder than the engines, louder than the storm. My hand shook so badly I dropped the service card. Coffee spilled across the aisle, but no one seemed to care. They were staring at me. Passengers, crew, everyone, like they'd heard every cruel word. I looked at 19F. The man's eyes were locked on mine now, wide and unblinking. He mouthed one final phrase, clear as glass. Why did you bury it? As we began our descent into Chicago, the cabin lights flickered. The voice faded, but the chill stayed. The man in 19F was gone. Seatbelt buckled, cushion still indented, but empty. I checked the manifest. No one had been assigned to 19F. Hannah swore she hadn't seen anyone there. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. When we landed, I tried to shake it off. Another strange night flight, another story to bury. But when I got home, I found something waiting on my kitchen table. A blank canvas. Not one I'd bought, not one I'd left out. Just there, clean, white, waiting. Beside it lay the brush from the galley drawer, its bristles stiff, its handle cracked. And on the canvas, faint smudges of charcoal outlined a face. His face. And beneath it, in handwriting I recognized as my own, were the words, "You'll crack." I don't know what 19F was. A ghost. A memory. A piece of myself I'd buried too deep. But he followed me home. Sometimes late at night, I hear the PA system crackle in my apartment, static bleeding into the silence. And then the voice comes, sharp as broken glass. You'll crack. I tell myself I won't. I tell myself I'm stronger now. But when I walk past the blank canvas still sitting in my living room, I swear I see faint strokes growing darker every day, like someone is finishing the drawing for me. And every time I glance at the chair across the room, I half expect to see him. The man from 19F, sitting, waiting, smelling faintly of damp soil. I've been flying for 8 years. People assume that means I've gotten used to turbulence, jet lag, crying babies, and drunk passengers. And I have. But there's one thing you don't get used to: loss. My twin sister Sophia was also a flight attendant. We used to dream about working the same routes, planning our schedules so we could travel the world together. Then, 3 years ago, her plane went down over the Pacific. No survivors, no wreckage found, just gone. I never boarded that flight because I traded shifts last minute. Sophia had texted me, "We'll fly together next time. Promise." We never got that next time. It was a red eye from Seattle to London. Nothing unusual, full flight, tired faces, the hum of engines carrying us into the night. As I moved down the aisle, my heart stopped. Seat 26A. A woman sat there, head tilted toward the window. Same dark hair, same uniform from Sophia's old airline, one they retired years ago. And on her wrist glinted the silver bracelet I had given her on our birthday. I froze. "Sophia?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't even turn her head. I checked the manifest. 26A was marked empty. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. At first, I told myself it was grief, fatigue, a trick of light. But then her things began to appear. In the galley drawer, I found her lipstick, the same shade she always wore, the cap worn from years in her pocket. Clipped to my uniform, I found her ID badge. The same one I'd returned to her locker after the crash. And tucked into my apron was a note, written in her handwriting. "Why didn't you fly with me that night?" I nearly dropped the paper. My throat closed. My knees weakened. Passengers were restless, some complaining of a sudden chill. I felt it too, an icy draft that seemed to curl out of row 26 no matter how many times I checked the vents. I tried to focus on my work, on coffee and blankets, on reassuring smiles. But every reflective surface betrayed me. In the window, I saw her sitting where no one else did. In the bathroom mirror, her face hovered behind mine, lips moving soundlessly. In the galley's stainless steel, she appeared again, eyes locked on me, mouthing two words. "Come with me." I whispered back, "I can't." The reflection smiled. Hours into the flight, we crossed the coordinates where her plane had gone down, the exact stretch of ocean I'd avoided for 3 years. The PA system crackled. I expected the captain. Instead, her voice filled the cabin, soft and clear. "Final boarding call, Rachel. Don't leave me alone." Passengers stirred, confused, whispering. Then the oxygen masks dropped all at once, dangling like pale faces above us. People gasped, fumbling. Crew scrambled to calm them. Through the chaos, I heard her again, whispering over the intercom. "Come with me." I looked at 26A. The seat was filled now, her head turned, eyes bright in the dim light. She raised a hand slowly, beckoning. Somehow we landed. Heathrow at dawn, gray and damp. Passengers clapped nervously, grateful just to touch ground. My legs trembled as I stood by the exit, thanking them as they left. When the cabin emptied, I turned. Seat 26A was bare, but on the cushion lay a folded slip of paper. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a boarding pass, not for Seattle to London, for her doomed flight 3 years ago. The date was today's. The gate number matched the one I was standing at now. I stumbled into the terminal, dizzy, the boarding pass cut into my palm. My reflection in the glass walls wasn't my own. It was hers, smiling faintly. That's when I realized she wasn't haunting me. She was recruiting me. Sophia wanted to finish what we'd promised, to fly together forever. And the only way she could was to bring me with her, onto a flight that never landed, a flight that never ended. Now, whenever I walk through an airport, I feel her near. Sometimes I see her at gates, sitting with a faded boarding pass in hand, waiting. Passengers around me laugh, check phones, complain about delays. But I know my delay won't last forever. One day, she'll call my name again, and I'll have to board. People are always surprised when they meet me. A male flight attendant, they say, like it's a novelty. I laugh it off, smile, make a joke about breaking stereotypes. What I don't say is that I've always felt like I had to prove myself twice as hard. Once for the job, and again for the mistake I can't take back. 6 months ago, during turbulence, a passenger slipped from his seat before I could secure the belt. He hit his head hard. He didn't make it. The investigation cleared me. Not your fault, they said, but I know better. I should have double-checked. I should have moved faster. His face lingers every time the seatbelt sign dings. That guilt came with me on Flight 817, Chicago to Tokyo. I thought I was just carrying it quietly. I didn't know someone was waiting to take it from me. He was there before boarding even finished. Elderly, thin, with a wrinkled suit that smelled faintly of mildew. His eyes, God, his eyes, were entirely black. Not the dark brown of old age, but bottomless, like holes burned through paper. On his tray table sat a collection of small objects. Buttons, coins, bits of jewelry, name tags, dozens of them neatly arranged like museum exhibits. When I asked if he needed water, he lifted his head slowly. His voice rasped like leaves scraping across pavement. I collect memories. Would you like to give me yours? I laughed nervously, thinking it was some strange joke. That's interesting. Just let me know if you need anything, sir. But as I walked away, I felt his eyes follow me. An hour into the flight, I glanced at my wrist. My watch was gone. Not slipped off, gone. The tan line was still there, but the band was missing. Later, I reached for my name tag. It wasn't pinned to my uniform anymore. I checked the floor, the galley, my pockets. Nothing. In 8B, the man had added 2 new items to his collection. My watch, my name tag, perfectly arranged among the coins and buttons. My chest went cold. It didn't stop with objects. When I reached for my phone during break, it was gone too, along with every photo, every contact, every saved message. My bag was empty, and with each loss, my mind dimmed. First, it was small things, my favorite restaurant's name, the title of a movie I used to love. Then bigger, my college roommates, face blurred. The memory of my first dog slipped away. I clung to what was left, but the guilt, the passenger who died, remained sharp, untouched. By hour 7, things got worse. During briefing, Hannah looked straight through me. "Where's David?" she asked. "I'm right here," I said, waving a hand. Her eyes skimmed past me like I was air. Victor glanced at the roster. My name wasn't on it. I grabbed Hannah's arm, desperate. "It's me, David." She pulled away, shivering. "Did you feel that?" Like a draft. They couldn't see me anymore. I staggered back to 8B. The man smiled, his black eyes gleaming. "Almost complete," he whispered. His tray table was full now. Not just my watch and name tag. Things I hadn't seen in years. A toy car from my childhood. My graduation ring. Ticket stubs from my first date. Even a photograph I'd lost long ago. Me and my parents at Disney World, laughing under fireworks. "Oh, how do you have those?" My voice cracked. "I collect," he said calmly. "And you give." I shook my head, tears stinging. "I didn't give you anything." His lips curved. "You did. Every time you forgot, every time you buried, every time you wished to be free, you gave them to me." By descent, I was hollow. I could barely remember my own address. My childhood was a fog. My family, blurred outlines. The only memory left sharp and cutting was the one I hated most, the passenger's death. The man leaned closer. His tray rattled as the plane tilted. "One more," he whispered. "The one you cling to, the guilt." "No," I choked. "That's mine. If you give it," he said, voice low, "you will be free. No pain, no weight, just nothing. And if I don't," my voice shook. "Then you live," he said. "But you live with it." He held out his hand, waiting. The seatbelt sign chimed. The cabin prepared for landing. But inside me, time froze. I wanted freedom. I wanted release. To stop waking in sweat. To stop hearing bones hit the floor in my dreams. But as I stared into those black eyes, I realized what freedom meant. Oblivion. Erasure. If I gave him the guilt, I'd give him me. I shook my head slowly. "No." His smile faded. For the first time, he looked disappointed. The tray table rattled again. objects shifting like angry teeth. "So be it," he said. We touched down in Tokyo. Applause rippled through the cabin. Passengers unbuckled, stretching, chatting. When I looked back at 8B, the seat was empty. No man, no tray table full of memories. Just a folded napkin, blank and ordinary. But in my chest, the guilt still burned. Heavy, real, mine. The crew remember me again once we deplaned. Hannah teased me for zoning out during service. Victor asked if I wanted to grab ramen. My name was back on the roster. But when I checked my wrist, my watch was gone. When I checked my bag, my phone was gone. And in my mind, holes gaped where memories should be. The man hadn't taken everything, but he'd taken enough. At night, I dream of him. Black eyes, a tray table full of lives. His voice whispering, "One more," and I know he's still waiting. Waiting for the day I'm too tired to carry the guilt anymore.